Welcome back, weary travelers. Imagine a horizon where the cold, gray waters of the north meet a sky that never truly sleeps. This is the world of Brynja, a young woman born to the ring of the hammer and the smoke of the forge. The daughter of a legendary captain known as the Sea Wolf. She has spent her life trying to forge a name that is entirely her own, not out of iron, but out of the choices she makes on the open sea. Close your eyes and let the world of the waking fade, replaced by the rhythmic ancient pull of the tide. You stand at the edge of the fjord, boots on wet stone, listening to your world breathe. The tide is on its way out. You hear it in the slow suck and sigh of water withdrawing from the rocks, in the small rattle of pebbles as waves drag them back, in the faint gurgle where a thin stream joins the salt. Above you, gulls quarrel on the wind, their cries falling and rising like thrown stones. The air is clear and cold enough to sting your nose. It smells of brine, tar, old nets, and the distant ghost of wood smoke from the village behind you. "You're out early," a voice says at your shoulder. You didn't hear him walk up. You rarely do. You know his footsteps better on ship planks than on shore stone. You turn. Leaf stands a pace away, cloak drawn close, dark hair bound back with a leather thong. He's taller than you remember from last summer, or maybe he just carries himself differently now. More weight in his shoulders, more stillness in his eyes. The scars on his knuckles are new, white lines like chalk. "Can't sleep," you say. He nods, as if that's answer enough. For a while you stand side by side, watching the fjord. The water is black as forged iron in the blue-gray dawn. Across the way, the opposite shore rises in a dark blur of pines, their tops swallowed by the low mist. Beyond the fjord's mouth, you know the open sea waits, all motion and teeth and possibility. "You still wearing it?" he asks, without looking at you. You feel the heat rise in your cheeks before you realize he can't see them under your hood. You slip your hand inside your tunic and close it around the small wooden pendant that rests just above your heart, a simple carving of a wolf, smoothed by thumb and time. Your father made it. Leaf is the one who strung it on the leather cord the day after your father didn't come back. "Of course," you say, letting it fall back against your skin. He grunts. "Good. Be ashamed to let it sit in a chest." Your father hated closed boxes. You knew him 2 summers, you say. You talk like you knew him since he was a boy. Leaf's mouth twists into something that isn't quite a smile. "Some men you know by how they hold a cup," he says. "Some by how they hold a blade. Your father, well, he could drain both faster than was wise. But that's not what told me who he was." "What did?" He hitches his cloak higher, eyes going distant. "I see where my fear of the most is a sense of love." He sees afar. The way he talked about you and your mother, he says, like a man bragging about shares of treasure he doesn't deserve. You feel something loosen and sting in your chest. "He never told me that," you say quietly. "Of course not," Leaf snorts. "You think he'd say something that soft to your face? Hakon the sea wolf sing-songing about his feelings?" He shakes his head. He only knew how to talk about love like it was a storm. The closer you got, the more he roared. You picture your father as he sounded in stories, bellowing from a ship's prow, hair whipped by salt wind, eyes bright with madness or joy, which, for him, might have been the same thing. It's always been easier to imagine him as legend than as a man who missed dinners, who left nets unmended, who chose storms instead of evenings by the hearth. The wolf at your throat feels heavier. You're leaving at low tide, you say. It's not a question. Leaf's boat is the only one in the village with a deep enough keel to make the coastal run safely this early in the season. The villagers have been whispering about it all week, half worried, half proud. Our Leaf, going down the coast to trade skins and iron for grain and salt and news. He nods once. Wynn looks right. And Torhild sent word they're low on iron down south. Good prices, if nothing goes sideways. Nothing goes sideways, you repeat, tasting the words. This is the sea, Leaf. If you wanted straight lines, you should have become a scribe. He laughs softly, breath steaming. The sea is all straight lines, Brynja. You just don't see them from shore. You roll that thought around in your head. Coming from anyone else, it might sound like boasting for its own sake. From Leaf, it feels like an invitation and a warning at once. You could stay, you hear yourself say, before you decide if you mean it. One more season. Help my mother with the nets. Patch the roof. Tell your crooked stories to the old men until they pretend not to laugh. Leaf doesn't answer right away. Down on the waterline, his boat bumps gently against the stone. It's smaller than the longships your father favored, broader in the beam and built for cargo, not raiding. The carved dragon on its prow is modest, more suggestion than threat. Its single mast is furled tight against the wingless dawn. I could, he says at last. You look at him, heartbeat stuttering a little. Do you want to, you ask? His jaw works, his eyes stay on the boat. I remember your father's face, he says slowly, when we came back from that last run without him. Your mother asked me, was it worth it? You swallow. What did you say? I told her the truth. He inhales, breath trembling just enough that you notice. I didn't know. I still don't. I've been trying to find an answer ever since. And you think another trip down the coast will tell you? I think sitting here won't. Silence settles between you. It's not empty. It's full of all the things you might say and don't, all the choices hanging in the cold air. You can feel the village behind you without turning, the line of low-timbered houses, the thin smokes, the churns and nets and cries, your mother waking stiff-backed on a hard bench, reaching for a husband who's been gone 3 winters. You can feel the horizon in front of you, the unseen inlets, the rumor of cities, the possibility of storms. I'm coming with you, you say. The words surprise you less than the calm that follows them. It feels not like a leap, but like a step you've been lining up for months. Leaf's head turns, his eyes find yours, search them, flinch, soften. No, he says. You blink. No? You're not cargo, Brynja? He shakes his head. You're not some sack of grain I can toss on deck because it asks nicely. I can row, you say, heat flaring under the calm. I can mend, we can cook better than Halfdan, and you still let him on your crew. I can. It's not about what you can do. His voice stays quiet, but there's steel in it. It's about what happens if, when, things go wrong. You take a step toward him. Pebbles crunch under your boots. You think I'm more breakable than you ask. Than Halfdan or Cole? Because I'm a woman, I think, he says, measuring the words out like coins he can't claw back. That I've watched you carrying your father's shadow for 3 years, and if I put you on that boat and don't bring you back, your mother will bury me with it. You almost laugh. It comes out sharper than it should. She already buried you with it, you say, the day you came home without him. You think she looks at you and sees Leaf? She sees the man who was there when her husband wasn't. He flinches. Just a flick of muscle near his eye, but you see it. That's what this is about, isn't it? You push. Not me, you. You don't trust yourself. He turns away, jaw tight. The sea doesn't bargain, he says. It doesn't care what promises you've made. It takes what it wants. So does the land, you say. So does staying. So does time. You think my father would have been safe mending nets his whole life? You think that's how death works? That it checks if you traveled first? You're breathing harder now. You flex your fingers, feel the roughness of old work, the strength there. You've hammered and ground and polished iron in the forge since you were strong enough to lift a hammer. You've held red-hot metal with tongs, watched it move under your blows. Stubborn and molten, and willing to take a shape only if you offered it a harder one. Let me choose the risk, you say, quieter. Like he did, like you do. Leaf is silent a long time. A wind stirs at last, moving across the water, lifting a little spray. The boat tugs at its rope as if impatient. Somewhere up the shore, a dog barks once, then again, frantic. A shutter bangs open. A woman's voice scolds sleep from a child. Your mother will say no, Leaf says. She'll say no whether I step on that boat or not, you reply. The question is whether you do. His shoulders rise and fall on a slow breath. When he turns back, something in his face has changed. Not softened exactly, but opened, as if he's stopped bracing for a blow he knows is coming. If we do this, he says, we do it clean. No hiding in the shadows. No slipping away like thieves. You tell her, to her face. And if she forbids it, I'll go anyway, you say. He's ready to argue. You see it in the way his mouth tightens. You lift a hand. If I let her fear trap me here for the rest of my life, you say, I'll drown on dry land. You know that. His gaze holds yours. Then, slowly, he nods, as if admitting a truth he's long pretended not to see. Then let's at least give her the respect of knowing which way you're walking, he says. Come on. You climb the path to the village together. The houses are waking. Smoke drifts from low chimneys, doors thump open, the smell of porridge oats and water, sometimes a hint of goat milk, seeps from cracks in walls. Women carry buckets to the well, voices low and practical. Men shoulder nets and lines, heading for the boats. Children dart like loose chickens, half-dressed and shrieking as someone throws cold water from a bucket over them. You pass familiar faces, some nodding greeting, some giving Leaf longer looks, part envy, part worry. Everyone knows his boat sails with the tide. Your home sits near the center of the village, its turf roof sagging a little more each year. You've patched it 3 times since your father's death, each spring another fight with rot and wind. The door hangs slightly crooked on its leather hinges. The carved lintel above your grandfather's work is worn smooth where hands have touched it for generations. Inside, the longhouse is half shadow, half smoke. The banked fire in the central pit glows dull red, sending up thin threads of heat. Your mother stands by it, stirring a pot with quick, efficient motions. Her hair, once the color of ripe wheat, is threaded thick with gray now, braided and wound at the nape of her neck. Her shoulders are straight, her back unbent, but there's a tiredness in the set of her jaw that no amount of strength can hide. Your younger brother Torvald hunches at the table, chewing on a crust of bread. His hair sticks up at odd angles. He hasn't bothered to comb it yet. When he sees Leaf, his eyes brighten. Are you taking the big sail this time? He blurts, before catching your mother's glance and ducking his head again. Torvald, she says. Just his name, but it carries 3 meanings. Mind your manners, let them speak, I'm listening. Leaf bows his head slightly in greeting. Ingrid, he says. Your mother doesn't stop stirring. Leaf, she answers. You're early. Tide won't turn for a little yet. I need to borrow something, he says. She snorts. If it's a pot, take the cracked one. If it's my son, he's more trouble than he's worth. If it's my daughter, it's both. You interrupt because you know he won't. Torvald's head snaps up. Me? He says, hope and alarm wrestling in his voice. Not you, your mother says, without looking at him. Her eyes are on you now. Explain. Your throat feels dry. The words you flung like spears at the water's edge suddenly sit heavy in your mouth like stones. I'm going with Leaf, you say. Down the coast, to trade. The spoon in her hand stops. Are you? She says. It isn't a question, not really. It's a weight, placed carefully on the table between you. I can help, you say. He needs hands. I know iron. I can speak for your work for Torvald's nets. I can. You can die, she says flatly. The room seems to shrink. The smoke presses lower. Torvald shifts on the bench, suddenly very small. I could die here, you say, softer. Tripping over a bucket, catching a bad cough, eating rotten fish. Death doesn't ask for my travel papers, mother. Don't be clever. Her eyes flash, more weary than angry. Your father was clever. He was also brave, you say. And look where it got him. There it is, the stone you've both been walking around for 3 years, pretending it was part of the floor. Out there, you say deliberately, with his hands on the thing he loved, doing what he chose. You can hate him for that. I understand, but don't ask me to hate the sea because it gave him what he wanted and then took its price. Her jaw tightens. And what is it giving you? She asks. What do you think you'll find on that boat that you can't find here, with iron and fire in your own people's hands to help hold you up when you stumble? You let your gaze flick around the room, the soot-stained rafters, the tools hanging on the wall, the warm bench where your father once sat, his bulk making the planks creak, the small gap where his drinking horn used to hang. Space, you say, surprising yourself with the answer. And answers. Her brows arch, just a fraction. About him? She asks. There are no more answers. He went out. He didn't come back. That's the story. The end. No. You step closer. The fire warms your shins, the smoke stings your eyes. That's just the last page. I want to know the middle, what he saw, what he chose, why the life out there called to him more loudly than we did. Because he was selfish, she snaps. You've thought it more often than you want to admit. Late at night, watching her hands tremble with weariness over a wash tub. Early in the morning, when she counts out dried fish and barley and comes up one meal short. You've thought it more often than you want to admit. Maybe that's part of why you want to go, to see if there was any reason big enough to justify the empty space he left. Maybe he was, you say, not flinching. Maybe I am too. But I'd rather be honest about it than rot from pretending. If I stay here hating him for leaving but never daring to step on a boat myself, I'll become a ghost in my own life, Mother. You didn't raise me for that. Her breath catches. For a heartbeat, she looks not like the unbending woman who has held this house together with spit and stubbornness, but like the girl she must have been once, clever, hopeful, reckless enough to fall for a man like Håkon. Leif shifts his weight, the boards creaking. He stayed very quiet until now, like a man trying not to disturb a knife edge. Ingrid, he says at last. If I don't take her, she'll go with someone worse. I know, she cuts in. That's the story you're about to tell me, isn't it? You and your noble conscience. If you don't carry the wolf, some other fool will set it loose. Leif's lips twitch. Something like that, he admits. She looks between you, something sharp and almost amused in her eyes. The two of you and your guilt, she mutters. Håkon leaves. You both spend 3 winters trying to replace him with your own brand of foolishness. She points the spoon at Leif. You are not responsible for every wave that hits this village. He opens his mouth, then closes it again. For once, he has no ready answer. She studies you. Do you love him? She asks abruptly. Your heart jolts. What? Leif. She nods toward him, as if he were a sack of grain on the floor. Do you love him? Is that why you're so set on running off to sit on a damp plank while he shouts at the wind? Heat floods your face. You're suddenly very aware of Leif's presence, the line of his shoulder at the edge of your vision. You swallow. I respect him. He doesn't lie about what the sea is. He came back when my father didn't. He helped mend the roof. That's not what I asked, she says. You glare at her, at the way she can still peel you open with 3 words. I don't know, you say finally. It's the only honest answer. Sometimes I think I do. Then he irritates me so much I want to hit him with a skillet. Does that count? Her lips twitch. It's a start, she says dryly. You risk a glance at Leif. His ears are red, but his eyes are soft. There's something like a question there, and something like relief that you didn't deny it outright. Your mother sighs, long and deep, as if letting air out of a wineskin that's been overfull for too long. When I was your age, she says, I promised myself I would never tie my life to a man whose heart belonged to anything else. No gods, no gold, no ships. I broke that promise for your father, because he made me believe I could be both his harbor and his horizon. She glances at the empty space by the fire. I was half right. She sets the spoon down with a gentle clack. I won't chain you to the hearth because I'm angry at him, she says quietly. That's not the kind of mother I want to be. Or the kind of woman I want you to remember. Your breath catches. So, she looks at Leif. Her gaze is flint. You bring her back, she says. Or you don't come back at all. Do we understand each other? He nods, Adam's apple bobbing. We do. Say it, she presses. If Brynja doesn't step off that boat with me when we return, he says, voice roughening, I won't step off either. Good. She gives a short nod. That's the only promise the sea understands. All or nothing. She comes around the fire. For a moment you think she's going to pull you into an embrace. Instead, she cups your face in her work-rough hands, fingers smelling of smoke and onion. Listen to me, she says. You are not going to find your father out there. Whatever you find, storms, cities, fools, gold, it will not be him. Don't chase ghosts, Brynja. Chase your own life. You nod, throat tight. And when you're afraid, she adds, remember 2 things. What? You whisper. First, your hands know how to hold hot iron without dropping it. You can do the same with fear. Her thumb brushes your cheekbone. Second, no matter how far you go, you always have somewhere to return to that doesn't care how many stories you bring, just that you're breathing. Now she does pull you in. Her arms are hard around you, ribs pressing. She smells of sweat and smoke and the faint sweetness of the herbs she stuffs in pillows to keep away lice. You breathe her in like you're imprinting a pattern on your bones. I'll be back before the snows, you murmur into her shoulder. She snorts against your hair. You better be. Torvald can't hammer a straight nail by himself yet, and my hands are tired. Torvald, who has been staring with wide eyes the whole time, puffs out his chest. I can too, he protests. Your mother flicks his ear with unerring aim. You can burn porridge, that's what you can do. Now go fetch more water. Your sister's leaving, and I'm not sending her off with a dry mouth. As Torvald scrambles to obey, she releases you and steps back, eyes suddenly bright. She blinks it away, turns brisk. Go, she says to you and Leaf, as if you were taking a short walk instead of stepping off the edge of your old life. Before I change my mind and nail your boots to the floor. Outside, the village seems sharper, more detailed, as if your decision has carved everything into clear lines. Leaf lets out a slow breath. I thought she was going to throw that spoon at my head, he mutters. She's still night, you say. If we come back late, he glances sidelong at you. You're sure? No, you say, but I'm going anyway. He smiles then, small, genuine, with a hint of awe. Good, he says. If you were sure, I'd worry you didn't understand what we're doing. You walk down to the boat together. The crew is small, Cole, who chews constantly on a twig and speaks only when he has to. Astrid, broad-shouldered and quiet, her hair cut shorter than yours, arms roped with muscle from years of rowing. And old Joran, who lost 3 fingers to frostbite and now tells the longest, strangest stories at the fire. They eye you with open curiosity as you drop your bundle onto the deck. You're bringing her? Cole asks, twig bouncing. Bold. You say that like I'm cargo, you retort. Your weight either way, Astrid says, voice dry. Question is whether you pull your share. I will, you say. Her gaze lingers a second longer, then she nods once. We'll see. Joran squints up at the sky. The wind smells like change, he rasps. And herring. Anyone else spill herring? You're always smelling herring, Cole mutters. They shove off. The boat slides free of the stone with a sound like a held breath releasing. You take your place on the oar bench, heart thudding. The handle is familiar under your palms from a dozen practice rows in the sheltered harbor. It feels different now, with the fjord opening its dark throat ahead. Ready? Leaf calls. Astrid nods. Cole grunts. Joran scratches his beard. Leaf's eyes meet yours for a fraction of a heartbeat. There's question, fear, and something like pride in them. You nod. Oars then, he says. Let's see if the sea will Stoddard can swim. You dig your oar into the cold water and pull. The village falls behind, roof by roof, smoke by smoke. You watch your mother's house until it's just another turf hump among many, until even that blurs and melts into the shore. Leaf stands by the tiller, hair ruffling in the growing breeze, watching the mouth of the fjord. The morning clouds are breaking, revealing a bright strip of pale blue over the low hills. Astrid rows with steady, unhurried strength. Cole hums under his breath, some tuneless thing that keeps time with the pole. Join spits into the water and mutters something about whales listening. You row, arms burning, breaths deep. Your body knows this work. It's just that now, every stroke is also a stroke into the unknown. After a while, the rhythm takes over. Cool, breathe, recover, breathe. The world narrows to the creak of wood, the hiss of the blade, the slight shift of the boat under you. Leaf calls the beat, voice shore, ha-ho, ha-ho. You fall into his cadence. Halfway down the fjord, when your shoulders are a solid ache and your palms are protesting loudly, he calls for rest. Oars ship, the silence rushes in, thick and rinning. You lean back, chest heaving, and let your gaze drift to the cliffs. Waterfalls thread down their faces, thin lines of white. Pines cling to the slopes, dark and stubborn. High above, where the rock meets sky, a pair of eagles ride the air, barely moving their wings. Call nudges you with an elbow. First time out, proper? He asks. Yes, you say. Feels different, doesn't it? He chooses twig thoughtfully, like you cut a rope you didn't know was tied to you. You consider. Yes, you say again. Exactly. Astrid wipes sweat from her brow with the back of her hand. First time I left, she says softly, I threw up over the side before we reached the fjord's mouth. Captain told me if I wasted any more of his rations feeding the cod, he'd tie me to the mast. Her mouth quirks. I've left 8 times since. Still throw up? You ask. Only when Cole sings, she says. Cole snorts. You've never heard music if you think I sing. I haven't heard music when you do, that's for sure. They bicker easily, the way people do who've weathered worse than boredom together. You listen, smiling despite your heartbeat. Leaf leans his back against the gunwale, stretching his legs out. You'll get used to it, he tells you. The rowing, the shift of the deck, the way the world moves even when you're standing still. I'm not sure I want to get used to that, you say, standing on land and feeling it sway. That never quite goes away, he admits. But you learn to like it. It reminds you that even when everything looks solid, it's still moving under your feet. Comforting, you say dryly. He smiles. Depends on what you want from the world. His gaze drifts to the horizon. Solid ground, or roads you can't see. I have enough roads I can see that lead nowhere, you say. I'll take a chance on the invisible ones. He's quiet for a moment. You know, he says at last, your father used to watch you at the forge when you thought he was out mending nets. You blink. He did? Leaf nods. He told me once, drunk of course, that he'd never seen anyone look at iron the way you did. Not like a tool waiting to be made, but like a question. And you were the answer. Heat prickles at your neck. He never said that to me. He wouldn't. Leaf shrugs. He kept his soft words where the sea couldn't hear them. You stare down at your hands, remembering the first time you held red-hot metal, the way it glowed like a captured piece of sunset, the way it begged to be shaped, but fought you every inch. You think he'd be angry I'm here, you ask quietly. On a boat, instead of by the forge? Leaf is slow to answer. I think, he says finally, he'd be angry at me for risking you, and proud of you for choosing it, both at once, like waves hitting from 2 directions.
That sounds like him, you say.
And he looks away, jaw flexing. I'm angry at him for putting me here. And grateful he isn't, because if he were, I'd never have met you like this, both at once. He huffs a laugh with no humor in it. We're all more than one thing. You study his face, the new scars, the lines around his mouth that weren't there last year, the way he watches the water, never completely relaxed. Do you still have nightmares? You ask, before you can second-guess the boldness. He stiffens, very slightly. Astrid and Cole go quiet, gaze sliding away as if you've stepped on a loose board. Leaf's fingers curl on his knee. Yes, he says. Sometimes. He blows out a breath. Less than before. But the sea comes back in dreams, even when you're on the driest hill. About my father, you press? Gently. About the ice, he corrects, eyes going distant. The sound it made when the hole cracked, like he gropes for words. Like a bone breaking that was also a song. About the way men's voices sound when the water hits them cold enough to steal their breath before they can scream. About the sky being so clear you can see every star while everything below it is falling apart. He stops, swallows, and about your face, he adds more quietly. When I told you he wasn't on the ship anymore, you remember that night? The way the world swayed under you, though you were on solid ground? The way your mother's hand found the table and gripped it so hard her knuckles went white? The way your throat refused to let a sound out at all? You did your best, you say. That's the problem. He huffs a bitter little laugh. My best wasn't enough to keep him alive. Why would it be enough to keep you? Because I'll help, you say simply. He looks at you, brows knitting. Your job isn't just to keep me alive, you go on. It's to steer the boat, make the trade, shout at Cole when he ignores rocks. My job is to listen, row, learn the currents, not do anything too spectacularly foolish. You shrug. We share the weight. That's how it works with the iron, too. Fire, hammer, tongs. None of them do the work alone without breaking. He studies you as if measuring metal for a blade's spine. Fire, hammer, tongs, he repeats. What am I in that? Depends on the day. You say, some days you're the tongs, holding everything together, keeping the heat from eating us. Some days you're the hammer, hitting too hard, making sparks fly. And you smile, small. The iron, I'm here to be changed. He laughs something like a genuine laugh. You have a way with words. I learned from a man who could talk a storm into coming closer, you reply. Astrid stirs. If the storm comes closer, at least we'll have something interesting to blame, she says. I'm tired of blaming Cole. Everyone blames Cole. Cole mutters. Even the fish. Especially the fish, Joanne adds helpfully. They say, here comes Cole, chew your hooks twice, and spit them out thrice. Joanne Cole says, that's not even remotely how fish talk. Have you asked them? Joran counters. No? Then who's the expert? Their banter slides over you, warm as a cloak. You feel the skein of connection here, thin but real. You could cluck it and it would sing, not like the heavy weave of the village, all old knots and shared winters, but something newer, lighter, spun from choice instead of habit. Leaf stands, scanning the fjord's mouth. The wind is freshened. You feel it on your damp skin, sharp and carrying the open sea smell, bigger and wilder than the fjords. Rest's over, he calls. Oars. Once we clear the headland, you'll see the real road. If you take your oar in hand again, as you near the fjord's mouth, the cliffs on either side rise higher, squeezing the sky into a narrow strip. The water changes in the boat, subtle at first, then insistently. Swells appear, not big yet, but with a different rhythm, rising from farther away. The hull lifts and drops, like the breathing of some huge creature whose chest you're balanced on. Your stomach flips. You grip the oar harder. Leith feels it too. Loosen up, he calls. Let it move you. If you fight the water, you'll lose. If you go boneless, you'll drown. Find the place in between. You adjust, knees bending slightly with each rise and fall. It helps. A little. Then, all at once, you're through. The fjord opens into the sea like a doorway into another world. The horizon stretches unbroken, a vast gray-blue line that seems to curve ever so slightly, hinting at distances your mind can't hold all at once. The sky above is bigger here, the clouds higher, the wind less tamed. The boat rocks more, yes, but it also seems to breathe easier, as if it had been cramped in the narrow stone throat and can finally spread its ribs. Your own chest does something similar. You look back once. From here, the fjord is a dark gash in the land, your village invisible in its folds. The cliffs you grew up thinking of as the edge of the world are just another seam in a bigger garment. You turn forward again. Leaf meets your gaze. There's no speech, no grand gesture, just a brief nod, a shared acknowledgement of risk, of choice, of the line you've both crossed. Set the sail, he orders. Brynja, with Astrid. Cole, mind that halyard. Jorn, if you sing, make it something the gods like. You move. The sail is heavy, rough woven wool that scratches your palms as you haul it up the mast with Astrid. The wind catches it with a soft thump, bellies it out. The boat leans, surges. Your heart lurches with it and then suddenly finds the new rhythm. Spray kisses your face, cold and sharp. The salty tang on your tongue is stronger now, bracing. The sound changes too, less echo, more open roar. The slap and hiss of waves against the hull, the creak of wood and rope, the ever-present rush of air. You laugh, not because anything is funny, but because your body needs to spill some of what's building in your chest. Careful, Leaf calls, grinning despite the lines of tension at his eyes. If you smile too wide, the sea'll think you're mocking her, and she'll try to slap it off. She can try, you shout back. He shakes his head, fond exasperation plain. Hakon's daughter, he mutters, almost to himself. You plant your feet, feel the boat cut through the water under you. Feel the wind press the sail. Feel the rope bite into your palms. Somewhere far behind you, in a smoky longhouse, your mother tends a fire and counts the hours. Somewhere farther still, under cold dark water and grinding ice, your father's bones lie among wrecked planks and fish. Somewhere ahead of you, unseen harbors wait with their own iron and stories and dangers. Right now, in this small moving world of wood and cloth and flesh, you share the deck with 4 other souls and the thin but growing threads between you. Guilt and hope between you and Leaf. Quiet understanding with Astrid. Wary curiosity from Cole. Ridiculous stories from Jorin. The sea breathes. You breathe with it. The sea keeps its promises. By midday, the sky has cleared into a pale, hard blue. The wind firms, steady from the north, cold fingers slipping under your cloak and straight through your wool. The sail snaps and groans overhead as the boat leans into his own shadow on the water. Leaf stands at the stern by the tiller, feet braced, one hand wrapped around the carved oak arm as if it were a part of him. Astrid has moved from the oar to check the rigging, her broad hands moving with practiced certainty over knots and lines. Cole squints at the horizon, his twig forgotten for once. Joran hums something tuneless that might be a song or might be a spell to keep boredom away. You sit back on the bench, arms trembling pleasantly with spent effort, watching the coastline slide past. Cliffs give way slowly to gentler slopes. The rock softens to earth. Thin strips of beach appear between the water and the low, scrubby hills. Here and there you see the suggestion of other lives. A curl of smoke from a hidden farmstead, a faint line of fence posts marching inland, a scatter of sheep like dirty snow on the grass. Feels smaller already, Cole says, nodding at the receding fjord. Or we feel smaller, Astrid counters from the prow, where she's tying off a line. Philosopher now, are you? Cole grumbles, but there's no heat in it. You watch the place where the land meets the sea, the narrow, broken border your entire life has been pinned to until this morning. From out here, it's just one line among many. Leaf shifts his weight, eyes flicking to a darker patch on the water ahead. Shoal, he calls. See that change in color? That's rock thinking it can be a fish. Astrid, come take the tiller. Cole, Bowwatch, Brynja, with me. You move before your mind quite catches up, boots thudding on the planks as you cross to him. He points. See where the waves steepen? That's the sea tridding over itself. You can't always see the rock, but you can see what it does to the water. You narrow your eyes. The patch he's pointing to is only slightly different. Waves breaking a little sooner, foam wider, the swell somehow humped, like a back just under the skin. If we hit that, you ask. Depends on the angle, he says. Best case, you scrape the keel and swear a lot. Worst case, you tear the hull open like a cracked egg and meet every fish in a hurry. You swallow. How do you know where the safe path is? You press. He smiles sideways. The sea shows you if you learn to read her. He taps his temple. You were right about iron. It's a question. So is this. Watch the patterns. Learn the answers before you need them. Call whistles from the bow. Dark water 3 points starboard. He calls. Looks deeper there. Good. Leif raises his voice. Astrid, bring her over. Brynja, eyes front. If you see anything that makes your stomach twist, shout before it's too close for cursing to help. You plant your feet and watch. The boat glides, shudders slightly as it passes above the edge of the shoal. You feel the change, more than see it. A subtle drag under the hull, a difference in the song of the water. Your gut tightens, then eases, as the darker patch of deeper sea slides beneath you. There, Leif murmurs. You let out a breath you hadn't known you're holding. Did you feel it? He asks quietly. Yes, you say, like someone catching at your cloak. He nods, satisfied. Good. Never ignore that. Your body notices things before your mind has language for them. The trick is not pretending you're too clever to listen. You're saying I should trust my stomach. You ask. I'm saying, he replies, that the part of you that knows when iron is at the right heat by color alone, that same part knows when the sea changes tone. Pay attention to it. You glance at him. Since when are you good with metaphors? Since I've been sailing with Jorn, he says. His nonsense leaks. Watch your tongue, Goy, Jorn rasps, not opening his eyes. My nonsense has kept us afloat more than once. Name one time, Call challenges. Jorn scratches his beard, squinting at the clouds. There was that time with the whale. That was the time you fell asleep on watch, Astrid says dryly. And the whale didn't hit us, Jorn points out. Proof my methods work. You smile, the knot in your belly loosening. The hours stretch. The sea is a gray-blue constant, never the same and never completely different. Your world has shrunk to the length and breadth of the boat, and yet somehow expanded to hold an horizon that never stops retreating. You take turns on the oar, on the lines, at the bow. Leif corrects your grip, your stance, their timing, not with barked orders but with quiet words, his hand closing over yours just long enough to show the angle before he lets go. At first, every correction stings your pride. Then you realize he corrects Call and Astrid too, and takes their feedback on his own choices when they offer it. The boat is his responsibility, but not we find it something funny. And next day we fluctuate. Good place to anchor for the night, he says, nodding toward a curve in the coastline where a rocky headland shelters a small crescent of beach. We'll be on open water by tomorrow. No sense rushing for dark just to show off. You help lower the sail, your hands moving more easily over the rough rope now. The boat glides into the lee of the headland, the water calms, losing some of the restlessness of the open sea. Cole, find bottom, Leif calls. Call takes up the lead line, a rope with a lump of lead on the end, marked at intervals with knots and bits of cloth, and tosses it overboard. It sinks quickly. He counts under his breath, then hauls it back in. 3 fathoms, he reports. Good hold. What's on the lead? Leif asks. Cole rubs the lead head with his thumb, then sniffs it. Sand and a bit of mud. Leif nods. Better than rock. Drop the anchor. You watch the iron hook plunge into the water, ropes making after it. The boat tugs once, twice, then settles, turning until it faces the slight swell. The feeling of constant forward pull eases, your joints hum with leftover motion. The beach is a narrow strip of pale sand between the water and a tumble of low rocks. Above, scrubby pines hunch against the wind. Want to go ashore? Leif asks. You blink. We can? He chuckles. Boat's not a prison, Brynja. We're not on a raid with orders to keep low. We're traders on a fair-claimed coast. As long as we don't steal anything or burn anyone's turf, we're just people touching land. I'd kill for a stretch, Astrid says, rolling her shoulders. And for not hearing Cole's chewing for a whole hour. My chewing is the only thing keeping the trolls away, Cole says. Fine, go ashore. Get eaten. See if I care. Joran waves a hand. I'll stay and talk to the gulls. They like my stories better than you lot do. Leif looks at you. Well? You realize you've been clenching and unclenching your hands, the idea of solid ground suddenly strange. Yes, you say. I'd like that. He grins. Take the little boat then. Astrid, you coming? In case she tries to wrestle a seal for a story? Astrid snorts. Yes. You clamber into the small skiff they tow behind the main boat, the wood surprisingly steady. Leif hands you an oar, keeps the other for himself. Together you row the short distance to shore, the skiff scraping gently on the sand as it runs up. The first step onto land after hours on water feels wrong. Your feet expect give and sway. The sand under your boots is unmoving, unyielding. You overcompensate, almost stumbling. Astrid laughs. First time every time, she says. Just wait till you've been at sea a month and try to walk straight into a mead hall. You look like a drum calf. You glare half-heartedly and take another step, feeling the muscles in your calves adjust. The beach smells different up close, less clean than the salt wind out on the boat, more tangled, rotting seaweed, drying shells, some dead thing the gulls have been picking out. The pines on the low bank add a sharp resin tang. You walk along the tide line with Leif and Astrid, boots leaving 3 parallel tracks in the damp sand. Small waves lap at your feet, icy on your ankles where they splash. For a few moments, no one speaks. The quiet of land after the constant low roar of the open water rings in your ears. Feels like the world's holding its breath, you say. The world's always doing that, Astrid says. It's just louder in some places. She veers off toward the rocks, muttering something about looking for mussels, leaving you and Leif walking side by side. You walk in companionable silence for a while. I used to think your father was selfish, Leif says quietly. Running off to chase storms, leaving you and Ingrid to mend what was left. Maybe he was, but now... He exhales. Now I wonder if the worst kind of selfishness would have been to stay and let that pull twist him into something bitter. You think of your mother's face, of the hard line of her mouth, of the way she held you this morning like she was both letting go and refusing to. She'd say he should have chosen you, you murmur. She's right, he says, from where she stood. From where he stood, he shakes his head. Sometimes there isn't a choice where everyone wins. You walk a few paces in silence, the question you've been circling since childhood rising again like a familiar whale in dark water. So what am I doing, you ask? Following his pole, running his road again, or something else? Leif thinks for a long time. I don't know, he says finally. That's yours to answer. But there's a difference between chasing a shadow and walking your own path that happens to go in the same direction for a while. How do I tell which I'm doing, you ask? He smiles, small and sad. You hammer it out, he says, like iron. Blow by blow, time and heat. Astrid's shout carries from the rocks. I've found crabs, and they've found my fingers. Come help or come laugh. You both turn toward her voice. Come on, he says. Let's see how many crabs we can offend before sunset. You wade toward Astrid, the cold water bracing around your ankles. The sky blushes pink along the western rim. The boat rides at anchor, a dark shape against the glow. For now, this is enough. Wet buttes, stinging fingers, shared laughter as Astrid yelps and Cole yells from the boat that if any of you invite cursed shellfish aboard, he's throwing you all over. You came for a story. You are still at its beginning. You reach the first trading town 2 days later. You know you're close before you see it. The signs are in the water and the air, more boats moving along the coast, some bigger than yours, some smaller, a slick of wood smoke hanging low over the sea, the faint clang of metal on metal drifting across the waves. Joran croaks from the bow. Smell that? Tar, fish, and too many people. You do smell it. The air is thicker here, heavy with the combined exhale of smoke, salt, sweat, drying fish, and the sour tang of ale. As you round a rocky point, the town reveals itself in fits and pieces. First the outer markers, tall poles driven into the shallows, carved with spirals and knotwork, painted in fading reds and blues. Then a scatter of small huts on the low shore, their turf roofs shaggy, nets hanging like cobwebs from poles. Finally, the harbor proper, a long, curving arc of stone and timber, crowded with boats of all kinds, broad-bellied cargo hulls, lean fishing craft, one sleek warship with a snarling beast carved on its prow. Behind the harbor, the town rises in tight ranks, timber houses painted in ochres and whites, some 2 stories tall, their upper floors jutting slightly over the narrow streets. Smoke curls from many chimneys. A tall building with carved dragon heads at the gables dominates one end. It could be a chieftain's hall or a particularly ambitious trader's house. You drink it all in, heart thudding. The noise alone is a shock after the relative quiet of the open water. Shouting, laughter, the thump of barrels, the clatter of hooves on cobbles somewhere beyond the wharf. Leaf stands a little straighter, eyes scanning the docks with a professional squint. "Half-an-hour guard," he says. "Keep your hands on your purse and your tongue behind your teeth, unless you've got something useful to say." Cole grins. "And if we don't? Then, at least, be entertaining about it," Leaf replies. "Astrid, ready the lines. Brynja, come here." You move to his side, steadying yourself as the boat dips in the busier wake. "Hafnargard has 3 kinds of people you need to watch for," he says quietly, eyes never leaving the dock. "Merchants, thieves, and people too stupid to know which they are. All 3 will try to get more from you than they give. The trick isn't to avoid being cheated entirely. That's impossible. The trick is to choose how and where you lose." "I thought the trick was to hit them with a stick if they dress too far," Astrid says. "That's the trick for later," Leaf says. "First, we trade." You frown. "Why tell me this? I'm just swinging a hammer and hauling rope." He gives you a sideways look. "You're also the only one on this boat who can tell pig iron from good steel at a glance." His mouth twists. "And I'd rather have you at my back in a deal than Cole. He'd sell my boots for a stale loaf if it came with a story." "I would not," Cole protests. Then, after a pause, "Well, depends on the story." You snort. The boat glides into an open space at the dock, bumping gently against fenders, bundles of old rope, and worn leather. Astrid tosses a line to a waiting boy on the quay. He catches it deftly, loops it around a cleat, and hauls you in. "Fee's a copper," he says, eyes sharp. Leaf flips him a small coin without argument. "Worth it," he murmurs to you as the boy scampers off. Better to pay him to tie us fast than pay later when some drunk bunks us loose. You step onto the dock. It sways under you more than the beach did. The timbers creak, water sighs and slaps against the pilings below. Your knees, still used to the boat's movement, overcorrect again. You steady yourself with a quick hand on a mooring post. Everything is too much. The colors painted holes in reds and greens and blues, bright cloths fluttering from lines, warm banners over doorways. The sounds languages you almost recognize mingling with ones you don't. The clatter of hooves, the squeal of cartwheels, the bark of dogs, the smells, smoke, fish, pitch, unwashed bodies, spices you can't name. Don't stare. Leaf murmurs at your shoulder. Predators notice the ones who look lost. "How can I not stare?" you hiss back. "The man over there has a bird the size of Torvald on his arm." "Then stare with your ears," he says. "Listen more than you look. And keep one hand on your purse." You pat the little leather pouch at your belt. The coins it holds feel so light compared to the weight they carry in your head. Each a hammer blow of work at the forge. Each a meal. Each a piece of oar or sail. "You trust this place?" you ask. "I trust that it wants my silver," he says. "And that's something." You move as a group along the quay, Astrid on one side of the small cart you've brought, Call on the other, Joran behind, mumbling to himself. You and Leaf walk in front, him slightly ahead, as if unconsciously taking the brunt of whatever may come. Stalls line the quay, rough tables piled with fish still damp from the sea, barrels of salt, bolts of coarse wool, baskets of withered apples. Traders shout their wares, voices rasping. Hands reach, prod, weigh. A man with gold hoops in his ears and a beard oiled into point steps into your path, arms spread. Leif Rofson, he booms, back again to steal my best deals and my worst hangovers. Leif's tension eases a notch. Stig, he says, I see the gods haven't struck you down yet for cheating honest men. They can't catch me, Stig says. I'm too fast in the head and too ugly in the face. He turns his broad grin on you. And who is this sharp-eyed one? New crew, or have you finally found someone to keep you honest? Brynja, Leif says, from Hakon's fjord. Stig's brows shoot up. Hakon the Seawolf? His daughter, you say, before he can say anything more. You lift your chin a fraction. Stig whistles. The world's gone strange, he says. Seawolf's girl trading in my harbor. Next you'll tell me Jorin remembers where he put his own boots. I put them on my feet, Jorin mutters. That way they don't wander off. Stig laughs, a deep belly sound. What are you selling, Leif? Furs? Iron? Stories? Some of each, Leif says. But I'll start with the iron. Torhild's bar is as good as ever, and the South always needs it. True enough, Stig says, rubbing his hands. Come. Sigrun's at the forge today. She pays fair, if you don't bore her. Sigrun, you ask. Blacksmith? Stig says. Owns half the iron in this town and all the swearing within 50 paces of her door. You feel a flicker of interest that has nothing to do with the sea. Lead on, then. Stig snakes through the throng with the ease of a man who spent his life dodging elbows and opportunity at once. You keep close, cart rattling behind you over the uneven planks. The air warms as you leave the immediate stink of fish, replaced by the denser, more familiar smell of coal smoke and hot metal. The forge is set a little back from Main Quay, in a low, broad building with its door flung open. Heat pulses from within, tangible on your face before you cross the threshold. Inside, the air is thick and bright. The central hearth roars, bellows wheezing as an apprentice works them, sweat pouring down his narrow chest. Sparks leap and fall like a frantic swarm of fireflies. At the anvil stands a woman. She is tall, nearly as much as Leif, with shoulders as broad as Astrid's. Her hair is shaved on one side, the rest braided down the other, streaked with iron gray despite the youth still in her face. Her arms are corded with ropey muscle, tattoos winding from wrist to elbow in dark blue swirls. She lifts a glowing length of iron from the forge with tongs, lays it on the anvil, and brings her hammer down in a blur. The sound is a language you know in your bones. Clang, turn, clang, turn, clang. Each blow is precise, not wasted, the metal moving obediently under her will. You're so mesmerized that you almost walk into Leif's back when he stops. Sigrun! Stig bellows. She does not look up. If you're selling gossip, put it in the water barrel, she says. It'll taste better there. Bringing you iron, Stig calls, and a new pair of eyes. At that, she glances over. Her gaze flicks across Leif. Recognition, calculation, and lands on you. It pauses there longer than you expect. Her eyes are very light, almost colorless, but not cold. She sets the iron back in the coals, nods to her apprentice to mind it, and wipes her forearm across her forehead, leaving a streak of soot. Leif, she says, did the fjord freeze you out, or are you finally smart enough to trade at the right season? Little of both, it says. And the girl? Brynja, you say quickly. I'm Hakon's, she finishes for you. I can see it in your jaw, and in the way you stand in a forge before anyone invites you. You blink? You knew him? He owed me 2 days' work and a skin of ale, she says. Seems to be a theme in his debts. A ghost of a smile. He worked my bellows once, complained the whole time. That sounds right, Leif murmurs. Sigrun steps around the anvil, wipes her hand on her apron, and offers it to you. You take it. Her grip is firm, warm, the callus is different from yours, but familiar. You're a smith? She asks. A learner, you say honestly. We have a small forge in the village. I've mostly made nails, hinges, a few knives. Once I made a plowshare I wasn't ashamed of. She nods, approval as slight as the lift of her chin. Good. If you'd said you were a master, I'd have known you for a liar. Stig snorts. Sigrun has 3 rules, he tells you cheerfully. Don't waste her time, don't touch her tools, and don't call yourself a smith until she does. Sigrun gives him a look that could wrinkle iron. Stig, if your mouth had a lid, I'd buy it just to hear silence. He bows with exaggerated flourish. Leif gestures to the cart. Torhild's bars, he says. Best she had. Straight from the bog iron beds by the fjord. You know her work. Sigrun's expression shifts, not to softness exactly, but to respect. Torhild doesn't waste her ore, she says. Let's see if her iron's as good this year as last. You unload the bars with Astrid, stacking them where Sigrun indicates. Up close you can see the quality, the slight sheen on the cut ends, the density of the green. Your fingers itch to test them. Sigrun watches you. Well, she says. You glance at Leif. He gives the barest nod. You step forward, pick up one of the bars. It's heavy, solid. You rap it lightly with your knuckles, listening. The sound rings, clear and bright with a long tail, not dull or sandy. You look at the cut end, at the small, almost invisible pores. Good bloom, you say. Well folded, not too much slag. Looks clean. And? Sigrun prompts. You hesitate, then turn the bar, squinting at a faint line of discoloration along one edge. This one, you say, holding it up, was nearer the edge of the hearth. See? The skin's a little grainy. It'll work, but it might crack if you push it too hard. Better for nails than blades. Sigrun's apprentice smirks. You're just showing off. Sigrun lifts her hammer just enough that the boy tenses. And you're just jealous you didn't see it, she says mildly. She takes the bar from you, runs her own thumb along the edge. Her face doesn't change. Torhild's getting old, she says. Her hands shake some days. You can see it in the heat marks. She drops the bar back on the pile. You've got a good eye. Warmth flares in your chest at the praise. It's not the hollow, inflated warmth of flattery. It's the solid, grounding heat of a well-made fire. Thank you, you say. Sigrun nods once. If you're with this lot long, she says, and you come through again, stay a day. I'll let you swing a hammer properly. Your fingers twitch. I like that, you say. Leif clears his throat. The iron, he says. How much? Sigrun names a price. It's fair, but Leif's jaw tightens just slightly, a sign you're learning to read. You'll be selling it at double that by the time you're done making it into nails and axes, he says. I'll be selling my work at double, she corrects. The iron is just the bones, my hands are the rest. Besides, Torhild's bars are good, but the marshes down south are rising. Iron's easier to get. The price falls while the rivers behave. You jump in before Leif can open his mouth again. What about the coastal road closing, you ask? We heard a storm last winter cut off the southern bogs. Was that wind just gossip? Sigrun's eyes narrow, assessing. Half gossip, she says. The road's rougher. Yes, but that hits grain harder than ore. Iron still moves. It always does. People can live without bread for a while. Go without nails in your hall. You drown today. She pauses. Why ask? Because, you say carefully. If you're paying less for Torhild's bars because you think iron's easier to get, we might come back with grain instead next time. And you'll be stuck buying from someone bringing worse bar at a higher price. Leif shoots you a quick, pleased glance. Sigrun's mouth curls just at one corner. Ah, she says. You've got your father's nose, too. He could smell weakness in a price like a wolf smells blood under snow. She folds her arms. Fine. I'll give you a little more for Torhild's sake. And for the girl who speaks like she's already thinking about next year instead of just tonight's drink. She adjusts the price, not wildly, but enough that you feel the difference in your bones. That's another coil of rope, another cask of salt, another handful of iron nails for your own village roofs. Leif inclines his head. Deal, he says. They clasp wrists, sealing it. As the coins clink into his pouch, you feel a strange tug inside, pride that you helped, and a thin, surprising thread of guilt, as if you've stolen something, even though all you did was ask a question. Sigrun seems to read something of that on your face. You didn't trick me, she says bluntly. You showed me where the scales would tip in a month. Better I lean into it now than curse later. Trade isn't about winning once. It's about being able to do it again. Tell that to Stig, Leif mutters. He tries to win every time. That's why he's got gold rings and no house, Sigrun says dryly. Now get out of my way. I've got to plow the finish for a man who thinks seasons wait while he drinks. You leave the forge with heat on your cheeks, coins in your pouch, and a new, oddly grounded sense of yourself, not just as a body on a boat, but as a pair of eyes and hands that can change the shape of things beyond the village. Leif falls into step beside you as you head back toward the harbor. Thank you, he says quietly. For what, you ask. For not letting her cheat us while making us feel grateful, he says. And for doing it without starting a fight. I just asked a question, you protest. That's where most fights start, he says dryly. You asked it well. Something in his tone warms you more than Sigrun's praise. You brought me for a reason, you say. I'd be a poor piece of cargo if I didn't earn my space. He opens his mouth, then closes it again. You see the thought flicker across his face that you are not cargo. He doesn't say it. He doesn't need to. The rest of the day is a blur of haggling and hauling. You trade dried fish and furs for sacks of grain, barrels of salt, bundles of cloth, and colors your village rarely sees. Stig introduces you to a man selling spices so strong they make your eyes water. Leif buys only a pinch, as if the cost pains him as much as the smell delights him. Astrid finds a stall selling tools, eyes the axes and adzes with a practiced frown. You end up talking with the toolmaker, an old woman with cloudy eyes and a knife-sharp tongue, about bevels and balance. She presses a small, slightly crooked nail into your palm when you leave. For luck, she says. And to remind you no piece is ever perfect. Cold disappears at one point. You find him later listening raptly to a traveler's tale about cities where the houses are built of stone stacked higher than the mast of any ship you've seen. You believe that? You ask afterward. Kahl shrugs. Does it matter? He says. If it's not true here, it's true somewhere else. A story that good has to be true for someone. By the time the sun droops low, painting the harbor in molten gold, your legs ache from walking and your head hums with new images. Leif calls everyone back to the boat. We leave at first light, he says. I don't want to spend more nights in this harbor than we have to. Too many ways to lose coin and teeth. Astrid yawns. One night of a roof over my head wouldn't hurt, she mutters. You can have my share, Joran says, settling himself on the deck. I sleep better with water under me. Leif glances at you. You can stay ashore if you want, he says. There's a cheap hall Stig knows. He swears it only has fleas on alternate nights. You wrinkle your nose. I'll take the boat. At least I know whose lice I'm borrowing blankets from. He laughs. That night you lie on your back on the deck, cloak wrapped tight, watching the unfamiliar arrangements of stars over this different piece of sea. You fall asleep to the occasional muffled curses from the quay, the smell of tar and fish in your nose, the knowledge that for the first time in your life, home is both behind you and beneath you. The storm finds you 2 days later. Not the worst storm the sea has ever thrown at men. Old Joran is quick to inform you of that before the first wave has even broken over the bow, but bad enough to scrape some of the innocence off your bones. It begins with a shift in the wind. Morning comes gray but calm. You hoist the sail with routine efficiency, fingers numbed less by cold now than by repetition. The coastline falls away into low, rolling dunes. Occasional rocky outcrops jut like broken teeth, but nothing your growing eye can't see in time. Then, around midday, the taste of the air changes. You feel it before you recognize it, a metallic tang at the back of your throat, a tightness in your scalp as if the hair there wants to lift. The wind that had been steady from the north falters, veering in small, indecisive gusts. Leif, you call. He's already looking up, squinting at the sky. The clouds have thickened without you noticing, piling on top of one another in a way that makes your stomach drop. They're not the low, scruffy gray of drizzle. They're higher, darker, with bruised underbellies. Toward the horizon, the line between sea and sky smears, the colors too close together. Astrid spits over the side. "That's ugly," she says. "Reef the sail," Leaf orders. "Half clothe only." "Cool. Stow anything not tied down. Joring." "I'll tell the sea a joke," Joran says. "She likes laughing at us when we're scared." You move to the lines, heart being faster. Leaf's face has gone very still. The easy humor of the harbor is gone. What replaces it is not panic, but a kind of sharp focus that slices through your own fear, organizes it. "This will be your first real blow," he says as you haul. "Listen more than you talk. Move when I say. If you have to be sick, do it leeward." Cole groans. "I hate this part." "You hate every part that isn't eating," Astrid says. "That's not true," Cole protests. "I also like sleeping." The banter sounds thinner now. The wind strengthens, not gradually but in jerks, like a drunk trying to decide whether to stand or lie down and doing both at once. The waves swell, dark-backed and oily, caps frothing white in patches. The first cold drops of rain sting your cheeks like thrown pebbles. You've seen storms from land, watched curtains of rain march across the fjord, heard the long rolling growl of thunder. It's different when there's nothing solid under you but carved wood and hope. The sky darkens unnaturally fast. The horizon vanishes into gray. The world shrinks to the boat, the water within a stone's throw, and the nearest edge of the coming wall of rain. When it hits, it comes all at once. The rain is a sheet, a dense barrier of water that hammers the deck, your back, the sail, so loud you can barely hear your own breath. The wind yanks at your cloak, your hair, your very skin. It howls in the lines and sings across the mast. The boat tips under your feet, rising on a swell higher than any you've yet ridden, then slamming down the other side with a crash that rattles your teeth. You grab for the nearest rope with both hands, knuckles whitening. Leaf's voice cuts through the roar, a hoarse shout. "Brynja! Astrid! On the main sheet! Cole! Get your arse down and hold that line! Joran, sit still for once!" You move, half blind, water stinging your eyes. The deck is slick under your boots. Your feet slide, seeking purchase. Your hands find wet rope. Strain. Astrid is beside you, braced wide, teeth bared and something too fierce to be a smile. "Pull," she roars. You pull. The sail cracks like a whip, then bellies, the boat lurching. You feel the raw power of wind in the cloth, in the way the mast flexes, in the vibration of the rope under your palms. It's like holding on to a live animal that wants to tear free. Lightning forks across the sky, close enough that for a heartbeat the world is white. The thunder follows almost instantly, a concussive boom that seems to punch the air out of your lungs. Your heart slams against your ribs. You taste iron, not just from the air. Fear is a bright, clear thing in you now, not the distant, speculative fear you felt on the beach. This is immediate, total. The knowledge that one misstep, one loose knot, one surprise gust could flip this little world upside down and spill you all into the indifferent water. You do not freeze, you move, because there is no room here for frozen things. Frozen things sink. Leaf is everywhere at once, at the tiller, at the lines, at Call's shoulder when his fingers slip, at Astrid's elbow when she leans too far to counter a swing. His voice is raw, reduced to 1- and 2-word commands. Loosen, hold, down, duck, brace. You obey not because he's captain, not because you're afraid of him, but because in this chaos, his words are the only solid handholds. A wave hits from the side, slapping higher than the gunwale. For a moment the world is only water, cold, heavy, blinding. It slams into your chest, forcing a gasp you don't hear. You feel your feet go out from under you, your grip on the rope loosen. A hand closes around the back of your tunic, yanking hard. You slam into a solid body instead of the sea. Leaf's face is inches from yours, rain streaking his beard, eyes bright and wide. "Stay low," he bellows. always 3 points of contact. Rope deck, you pick. Just don't pick the water. You cough, spit, nod. Your fingers tighten on the rope as if it were a lifeline, because it is. The minutes blur. Time becomes a series of snap decisions. Grab that, duck this, pull now, release now. Trust your feet, trust the boat, trust that the next wave won't be the one that turns you all upside down. Your muscles burn, your throat aches from shouting. Your skin is numb where the rain hits, raw where your cloak has shifted and left it exposed. Somewhere in the chaos, a calm center pounds in your chest. You are scared, yes, but you are also alive in a way you have rarely been. Every nerve firing, every sense screaming, every scrap of training and instinct fused into a single burning thread of intent. Stay up, stay together, survive. You think, in one brief suspended instant as the boat tips up the face of a wave like a horse rearing, of your father, of how his stories always lingered longer on the storms than on the quiet harbors, of how his eyes, in the few memories you have of him not blurred by age or grief, always looked far away when he talked about waves. For the first time, you feel, not understand, not forgive, but feel in your skin what might have been in him when he faced this and thought, yes, this is where I belong. The realization is a double-edged thing. It cuts through some of your anger. It also cuts into the scar tissue you've grown over the hurt of his absence. Brenya, Astrid's shout snaps you back. Duck! You drop just as the boom swings overhead, a dark blur where your skull was a heartbeat before. Thanks, you gasp. Thank me later, she grunts. It feels like hours. It might be less. When you're in the forge, sometimes the world shrinks to a single glowing bar and the beat of your hammer. Here, the world is shrunk to the boat and the beat of the waves. Then, just as abruptly as it began, the worst of it is past. The rain slackens to a mere downpour. The wind, while still strong, evens out, its gusts less savage. The waves, though still big enough to make your stomach lurch, stop trying to climb into the boat. Your grip eases a fraction. Your arms shake with the effort of not collapsing. Leif's voice drops from a shout to a hoarse call. Keep her bow to it. Don't slack yet. Storm's Eye might just be rolling by. You stay braced, but some part of you has already begun to step back from the cliff edge inside. Only then do you notice the blood. It streaks the deck near the mast, washed thin but unmistakable, running from a crumpled shape at its base. Joran, Call yelps. The old man lies half-curled, one arm wrapped around a post, the other at a bad angle. Blood mats the side of his head where it meets the deck. You half stumble, half crawl to him, knees banging on the wet planks. Joran, can you hear me? He shouts over the still loud wind. His eyes flutter. One opens a crack. You're loud, he rasps. Thought I was dead. No one shouts that much on the other side. Relief makes you dizzy. Your head, you say. You slipped? Boom kissed me, he says weakly. Guess she likes me. Leif appears at your side, still soaked, still breathing hard. He kneels, fingers gentle as he probes along Joran's skull. Not cracked, I think, he mutters. But he'll have a lump the size of Cole's ego. I don't have an ego, Cole protests from the lines. I have a healthy sense of my own importance. You have the sense of a drunk cod, Astrid says. Keep that sheet tight. You tear a strip from the hem of your tunic fabric, already half frayed, and press it against the worst of Joran's cut. Hold this, you tell him. His fingers, though shaky, obey. You're bossy, he mumbles. Someone has to be, you say. Leif's hand rests briefly on your shoulder, solid and warm even through the wet layers. Good, he says. Stay with him. Talk. Don't let him drift. If he starts making less sense than usual, shout for me. How will I tell? You ask. He barks a hoarse laugh and staggers back to the tiller. You sit there in the wash of the receding storm, your back against the mast, one hand steadying Joran's, the other still wrapped in rope in case the sea decides she wasn't finished after all. Your body aches, your throat is raw, your heart is a wild thing in your chest, not yet convinced you're safe enough to slow. But you are alive. The boat is still under you. The people you've come to care about are bruised and bloodied, but breathing. Later, when the sky is cleared to a washed-out blue and your clothes have dried in stiff, salty wrinkles, when Joen snores with his bandaged head pillowed on a bundled spare sail, when Astrid has stopped shaking long enough to pretend she wasn't shaken at all, then you will sit with Leif at the stern and look out over the calm water where the storm used to be. You'll say, quietly, I think I understand him better now. Leif will know who you mean. He'll be silent for a long time, watching the sun struggle through the tattered edge of the departing clouds. Understanding doesn't mean forgiving, you'll reply at last. And forgiving doesn't mean agreeing. You're allowed all three or none. I don't know which I have, you'll admit. That's fine, he'll say. You don't owe the dead an answer. You only owe the living your honesty. The boat will creak, a gull will cry, lazy again now that the sky has settled. You wanted to know why your father chose the sea over you. Now, sitting on this small piece of wood between sky and depth, throat still tasting of thunder and fear, you find yourself more interested in a different question. What will you choose when the time comes? The storm leaves gifts in its wake. The next day dawns bright and cold, the air scoured clean. The sea, while still rolling with the long, slow swells left over from the blow, has lost its teeth. You're sitting on the bow, letting the rhythmic lift and fall soak into your bones when you see it, a dark shape on the horizon, low and wrong. At first you think it's a rock, then it shifts, listing, something pale fluttering where sail should be. Leif, you call. There's something ahead. He squints, hand shady his eyes. His posture stiffens. Wreck, he says. We're near enough. Astrid, easy on the sail. Cole, have a line ready. Briny eyes sharp. As you draw closer, the shape resolves into a small two-masted trader. Hull low in the water, one mast snapped halfway up like a broken bone. The sail that remains is torn to ribbons, flapping weakly. The hull lists dangerously, riding awkwardly in the swell. No movement on deck. No answering shout when Leif cups his hands and calls. Dead? Call asks quietly. Or gone, Astrid says. If the storm didn't finish them, someone else might have found them first. You know the unspoken part. If no one's left alive, their cargo is fair game. Coins don't spend in the afterlife. Leif's jaw works. We go closer, he decides. If there's anyone breathing, we help if we can. If not, he exhales hard. We'll see what the sea's thrown back. He steers you in, careful of angles and current, until your hull mudges the others with a dull thump. Up close, you can see the damage. Splintered railing, deep gouges where waves slammed cargo against wood, blood smeared near the mainmast. Your stomach flips. Hooker, Leif orders. Astrid and Cole throw grappling hooks, the iron teeth biting into the other ship's rail. Ropes creak as the boats tug against one another, dancing in uneasy, tethered dance on the swell. I'm going over, Leif says. Me too, you say immediately. He opens his mouth to protest. You see the words forming. You cut them off. I'm lighter, you say. If the deck's unstable, I'm less likely to put my foot straight through it. And you'll need these. You tap your eyes. If there's good iron lying about, you want me to tell you worth from scrap, don't you? He hesitates. Jurin, bandaged and pale but conscious, mutters from where he lies propped against the mast. Let the girl earn her ghost's Leif. Keeping them all to yourself isn't healthy. Leif glares at him, then looks back at you. Stay where I can grab you if something shifts, he says finally. And if I say jump, you jump, even if it's into the water. You nod, throat dry. Cole steadies the boats as best he can while Astrid straddles the gap, then shifts her weight onto the damaged ship's rail. It creaks ominously but holds. She tests the deck with her foot, then waves you on. You follow, heart pounding. The other ship's deck is a mess of broken crates, tangled rope, and loose planks. The smell hits you first. Old seawater, wet wood, a sharp tang of something spilled, ale or vinegar, overlying the sour sweet scent of blood. You pick your way carefully, boots slipping on the slime. Bodies, Astrid says quietly, nodding toward the base of the main mast. 3 shapes lie there in a rough heap, tangled in rope and fallen sail. Your breath stutters. You've seen the dead before. Old people laid out in the longhouse. A man crushed by a falling beam. But never like this. Never with the sea's hands so fresh on them. Leaf kneels, fingers to throats that won't answer. Gone, he says. You swallow hard, fighting the reflex to look away. You force yourself to look instead. To see their faces, the way the lines of fear and pain have already begun to smooth in death. The way their hands still curl, as if reaching. Storm took them. You ask, voice barely more than a breath. Leaf nods, gaze moving over the bruises, the rope burns, the angle of limbs. Looks like it. Mast went. Rigging came down on them. If the sea wanted them all, she was greedy enough to take the rest. Unless someone helped her. Astrid's hand rests lightly on the hilt of her belt knife as she scans the deck. Any sign of cut lines, boards pried up. You help them look. It's easier somehow to focus on the practical than on the still faces. You see where the mast snapped, a clean break, as if stressed too hard by wind and wave. Ropes frayed by strain, not blades. Crates smashed where they slid, not neatly opened. Looks like the storm did the work, you say. Leaf nods slowly. Then the sea's done with them, he murmurs. We're just the tidying crew. What about below? You ask, nodding at the hatch. Astrid wrinkles her nose. Could be waterlogged. Could be rats. Could be both. Could be someone alive, you say. If they got trapped. Leaf considers, then moves to the hatch, tests it with his foot, and hauls it open. The smell that wafts up is worse. Stale air, bilge water, rot. Anyone down there? He calls. His voice echoes in the dark. Silence. Then a faint sound. A cough or a groan. It's hard to tell over the creak of wood and the slap of waves against the hull. Your skin prickles. Leaf. You meet his eyes. He grimaces. Astrid, keep the lines ready. If the hull shifts, I want us off this thing before she decides to dive. He swings his legs over the hatch ladder and disappears into the gloom. You wait, heart, hammering against your ribs. Every creak of the ship feels magnified. The other hull is tired, less responsive to the sea's rhythm than your own boat. It feels more like a carcass than a living animal. A shout comes from below. You can't make out the words, but it's Leaf's voice. Then another, weaker. Without waiting, you follow. The lower deck is dim, lit only by the light spilling from the open hatch. Your eyes adjust slowly, picking out the shapes of barrels, crates, ropes. Water sloshes around your boots, cold and ankle deep, shifting with each sway. Leaf stands knee-deep at the far end, half turned toward you, supporting a slumped figure against his chest. Help me, he grunts. You wade to him, slipping only once, catching yourself on a barrel room. The survivor is a man maybe 10 years older than Leaf, lean to the point of gauntness, dark hair plastered to his skull. His skin is pale under the grime, his lips are cracked. He blinks at you, dazed. Thought, he croaks, thought you were Hell's girls. Not today, you say. Up you go. Between you grunting with the awkward weight and the sucking drag of water, you haul him toward the ladder. He's lighter than he looks, too long without food or drink. Astrid's hands appear at the hatch, grabbing under his arms and hauling him up the last bit with a strength that makes your muscles ache in sympathy. You good? Leaf pants. Fine. You lie, lungs burning. You help him up, then climb after him, legs shaking. The air on deck feels sharp suddenly, after the damp closeness below. You gulp it, chest heaving. The rescued man sags against a coil of rope, eyes fluttering. His gaze lands on Leaf's face, then yours. Sigrid, he murmurs, confused. Did I drown already? Not yet, Leaf says, though you did your best to try. What's your name? Eric, he says. Swallows. Eric Kettleson. We were bringing grain north from the river towns. Thought we could beat the weather. A bitter, breathless laugh. The weather decided otherwise. You were caught in the same storm, you say. Felt like the sea tried to turn us inside out, he says. Mast went, men went. I ended up down there under a barrel. When I got out, his eyes flicked to the still forms by the mast and then flinch away. Couldn't get them up. Couldn't get the water out. Couldn't. His words trail into a ragged cough. You hand him a skin of water from your boat. He drinks like a man tasting rain after a drought, almost choking in his haste. Call eyes the cargo hatch. If they were bringing grain north, he begins. Astrid elbows him. Wait, she mutters. Leif is watching Eric, something complex passing through his eyes. Your south coast? He asks. Eric nods weakly. From Haviland. My wife will kill me if I'm dead, he adds, with a ghost of humor. Said the same when I married her. Leif snorts. Tell her she'll have to wait, he says. We'll get you to the next harbor if we can keep this thing afloat that long. You don't have to, Eric says. You could take the grain, cut the lines, let the sea finish what she started. No one would call it unfair. Leif's mouth sets. My crew would, he says quietly. So would the girl glaring at me right now. You blink. I wasn't glaring, you say. Much. Eric's gaze lingers on you. Seawolf's girl, he says suddenly. You start. You know that name? He laughs, a short, cracked sound. Everyone who's been on a deck more than 3 days knows that name. Hakon the Sea Wolf took my neighbor's best cow and left a gold cup in its place because he said the cow had insulted him. My neighbor never forgave him. Or the cow. Sounds like him, Leif mutters. Eric steadies you. Did he tell you? He asks slowly that he once hauled a stranger out of a storm wreck at the cost of half his cargo. Your breath catches. No, you say. He left that one out. Of course he did, Eric says. Couldn't have people thinking he was soft. He smiles. One. I was the stranger, younger then, stupider. Thought the sea owed me a calm passage if I sang to her pretty enough. You knew him, you breathe. Knew of him, Eric says. Shared a deck with him once. The man cursed like 3 sailors and a priest. But he didn't leave me in the water when he could have taken my cargo and sailed on. He pats the wet planks under his hand. Seems his girl's found someone with the same bad habit. You feel something tight in your throat. The boat, the salt, the air, all blur slightly. Leif shifts, uncomfortable. Grain? He asks again, a little too briskly. How much do you have aboard? Enough to make the next port like me, Eric says. If I arrive with it, if not, he shrugs, winces. Take some. I can't stop you. You saved my life. That's worth 1/3 of the hold, at least. Half, Call mutters under his breath. We saved his whole self. Leif looks at you. In that look is a question he doesn't voice. Profit or principle, or some line between. You think of your mother scraping barrels for the last bits of grain in an hungry spring. You think of Torhild's warning about the price of iron and the cost of roads. You think of Sigrun's measuring gaze, Stig's greedy grin. You think of your father leaving your village with barrels full and coming back with tails instead. What would you do, you ask Leif, quietly, if I weren't here? He hesitates only a second. I'd take enough to cover our costs and time, he says, and make sure he can still get to harbor alive. And what do you want to do? You press. He laughs. Low. You don't start with easy questions, do you? Never, you say. He looks out over the water, then back at Eric, then at you. I want to take him and leave the grain, he admits. Because I'd like to be the kind of man who does that. But I have a crew, and mouths back home that depend on what we bring. You nod. Then we tell him the truth, you say. We take enough to pay our way. No lies, no pretending it's charity. You can't feed people on stories about what a good man you wanted to be. He nods, jaw firming. We're taking a portion, he tells Eric. Fair for our work and risk. Enough that we can tell our people we weren't fools. You keep the rest. You'll need it to bargain for a new mast. Eric studies him. Then he laughs, a short, surprised bark that turns into a cough. Halcon would have taken more, he says, and told me I was lucky to keep my boots. Maybe the world's changing. Maybe I am, Leaf says quietly. You help siphon grain from Eric's hold to your own barrels, working quickly before the swell works its way too deeply into the damaged hull. The work is hard and gritty. By the end of it, your throat is caked with dust and salt. When you finally cut the grappling lines, leaving Eric's ship sitting lower but less dangerously crooked, you feel an odd, guilty lightness. You gained something. You lost something. You chose the shape of that loss. As your boat pulls away, Eric leans on the rail, swaying. Tell Sigrun, he calls, voice thin on the wind, that Eric Ketelsen still owes Hakon a barrel of ale. She'll know what it means. Leaf lifts a hand. We will, he shouts back. You watch the wounded trader until distance and haze swallow him. Do you think he'll make it? You ask quietly. I don't know, Leaf says. But he has a chance now, which is more than he had when we saw him. You nod. Somewhere deep in your chest, a knot you weren't aware of loosened slightly. Maybe the sea took your father. Maybe he chose her first. Maybe both. But today, you helped the sea give someone back. It doesn't balance the scales. Nothing ever really does, but it tilts them, a little, in a direction you can live with. The southern town is different from Hafnagard. Where Hafnagard felt like a knot of wood around a harbor, dense, twisted, practical, this place spreads, flatter and wider, spilling inland along a river mouth. The air is warmer, the wind's softer, carrying smells you can't name. The day you arrive, the market square by the docks is crowded not just with local traders, but with people clearly from elsewhere. Darker skin, different cuts of clothing, jewelry you've only seen drawn in the margins of old tales. Some are fair, Leaf explains as you dock. We're lucky, good prices if you don't get stabbed. Comforting, you say. He grins. Stay close. Astrid, you're ninja. Cole, you're with the barrels. Do not sell the barrels for a song. You say that like it's a bad trade, Cole mutters. The square is a riot of color and noise. Stalls with bright awnings sell things you've never seen, tiny glittering beads in blues deeper than the sea, cloth so fine it drapes like water, jars of something that smells sharp and pungent and makes your eyes sting. You drift toward a stall hung with metalwork, bracelets, brooches, small knives, buckles. The smith, a man with a scarred lip, eyes you as you pick up a brooch shaped like a leaping fish. Good work, you say, almost despite yourself. Plain casting. You know metal? He asks, surprised. A bit, you say. He hands you a different piece, a ring with a twisted band. Tell me about this, then. You weigh it. It's comfortable in the hand, balanced. The twist is even. The middle is a warm yellow, not as rich as pure gold, but brighter than bronze. Not all gold, you say. You've stretched it with copper. Clever. Makes it stronger, and easier to afford. He grins, revealing missing teeth. You've got the eye. You buy, I give you fair rate for the tongue that sees. You're tempted by the challenge of working with such metals, by the idea of bringing something back to your mother that isn't just grain and stories. But your coin pouch is not bottomless, and you're not here for trinkets. Maybe on the way back, you say. As you turn, you see Leaf on the far side of the square, deep in conversation with a tall man in a red cloak. His posture is relaxed, but you can read tension in the set of his shoulders. Astrid nudges you. He all right? She asks. Probably, you say. But let's be where he can see us. You weave through the crowd. As you draw closer, you catch snatches of their conversation. Price is up this year, the red-cloaked man is saying. Roads less safe. Risk costs. Risk costs both ways, Leaf replies evenly. If I can't afford your grain, I'll take my silver inland instead. The rivers still flow, even if the roads don't. Red Cloak snorts. You've always been stubborn, and you've always been greedy, Leaf returns. The question is whether we can find a place where those two things share a cup. You and Astrid step up beside him. His hand loosens on his coin pouch when he registers your presence, as if your being there puts a weight in his favor. The man eyes you. Who's this? Crew, Leaf says, and my Iron Master. Speak softer about bad deals, she bites. Red Cloak raises his hands in mock surrender. Peace then. Eric of the South, he introduces himself. A different Eric, you note Riley. The world seems full of them. Brynja, you say, of the North. And your grain? He laughs, a real one this time, straight to the point. Good. I like people who don't pretend they're here for my charm. You fall into the dance of barter again. This time, you watch more than you speak, letting Leaf handle the rhythm while you add only when something about weight or quality seems off. The grain is good, dry, clean, no stones. The sacks are full. The price Eric wants is high but not outrageous. You can live with the loss if the return at home is what you expect. At one point, Eric leans in and says quietly to Leaf, "You've changed." Leaf's brows lift. Have I? You used to argue a point until both of us were too tired to care who won, Eric says. Now you listen. Takes the fun out of calling you names. Leaf's gaze flicks to you, then back. I have more people to answer to now, he says simply. Eric follows the glance, his smile turning knowing. Ah, he says, that'll do it. You don't ask later which people Leaf meant. Him, you. Your mother. Everyone whose coin depends on his choices. All of the above.